Jeremy Ellis here, maker of Roxetta.com, Twitter @Roxetta. I've got to teach a course in about 8 months on robotics, sort of Internet of Things stuff, and I've been researching it. And there's some really good things out there. First of all, there's Phonegap. Phonegap's amazing. It allows you to control your apps, your web pages, make apps out of them. And don't forget, with the Internet of Things, your smartphone is incredible for the number of sensors it has, the things it can do. And Phonegap completely lets you work with that. Now, the Internet of Things is mainly microcontrollers, sensors, actuators, that's the hardware, and software such as C Robot, Node.js, Java, JavaScript. So Phonegap really helps out. Now, microcontrollers, we have, let's go down here, we've got the Arduino and the Raspberry Pi. They've been around for ages. The Arduino has been around for about 10 years. And it allows some really smart people to do some cool things. But as far as teaching, I could get kids to do a recipe where they do exactly what I want them to do, but I'm not sure if I can get them doing much creative with it. It's just really complex. Now, Spark, companies come out with this. Let's go through here. Phonegap developer app, Arduino's webpage. Spark has the Spark core, and it's just coming up with the Spark Photon, $19. Kind of looks like an Arduino, but it's Wi-Fi out of the box, and it's really impressive. So that should end it. Problem is, there's a bunch of confusion with the Spark, and I'm just wondering if we've all got to wait till Google makes everything easier and comes up with their online controller and things to hook up to it. But let's go through this. If you wanted to learn about sensors and actuators, this product, Snap Circuits, is really, really cool. You can make a whole bunch of things with it, that sensors, actuators, motors that move stuff. Very, very simple. Now, as far as the Spark, the website is a bit freaky. This is an easier version of something very cool that made up by Jonathan Berry. Here's the Spark version. You look at that, I just get overwhelmed. If I go back to my one, it basically says AO, analog out, is number 10. This is kind of important. The notes over here are kind of important. DO, digital out, or in, is 0. D7's a pretty cool one because it's hooked up to this little light up here. So right out of the box, you can figure out if your online software can activate something. 8 analog pins, 8 digital pins, and a ground, and a 3.3 volt. Now this is really important. It's different than the Arduino, which is 5 volts. 5 volts is kind of nice because you can start running small servo motors and things. It does have a V-in, but it all starts getting pretty confusing with milliamps and voltage and stuff like that. So I want to work through this. Let's go for Spark works great. Oh, Spark has a little app. This is the Android version of it. It helps you set up the Spark core. That's pretty cool. Now, here we get into the confusing stuff. If you have to set up on USB, here's what Spark says. Connect over USB. Windows driver for the Spark core. That should be pretty easy. Us Windows users, we just click on that and it installs it and everything works. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. I actually suggest people go to this page and try installing that. It's not that bad eventually, but it's not Windows friendly. So let's go on. Say you're having problems. I had 2 core. Well, I've got 1 core. I've got my Photon ordered. I borrowed a friend's core. And somehow it kind of worked, but then it just flashed green. And oh my goodness, it would just flash green. Here's the web page about it. DFU mode. This way you get to over USB you get to reinstall stuff onto your flash core or your core. This looks pretty easy. If you wish to program, hold down, put it into DFU mode. It's It's really difficult. This is nearly impossible. I eventually got it done, but we're talking hours of work. I emailed Spark, and they nicely said, maybe you're entering your Wi-Fi password incorrectly. I've been programming for 38 years. I've taught for 2 decades. I think one of those times I got the password right. So let's move on here. That's difficult. I do actually have a GitHub site where I'm kind of working on it, making that a little easier for Windows. We don't all want to be Linux programmers. I've had about 5 Linux servers going for about 8 years. I can do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to remember confusing command line statements. Let's get this thing working. Okay, so say you have a core that works. Tinker, pretty cool program. Let's see what we got here. Oh, that's my version of GitHub. Using Tinker. Okay, so the code here, a bit confusing, but what's really weird with the Spark core is they only allow 4 functions that actually activate things. You've got 16 possible pins that you can work with. 32 functions would be nice, 1 to turn it on, 1 to turn it off, but they only allow 4. I get that it's a hardware issue, it's a pain in the patootie. And here's some rather confusing code that figures it out because it only has 4 functions that are allowed. Tinker's kind of nice. You get to test your digital and analog pins. So the firmware documentation. This is where you kind of learn how to program it, and I really like this. It's core code firmware. You go through, you learn all kinds of stuff. This is a great page. The only problem I had was these variables. It'd be really nice to be able to send information back and forth between the Spark and the internet. I couldn't get it working. Also, check out this weirdness. Once again, you're limited to 10 Spark variables. I get that. It's probably a hardware issue. But this one, oh my goodness, each name can only be 12 characters long. DOS gave up the 8.3, 8 characters of a file name, 3 of the extension, years and years ago. To be programming and having to remember, you got to stay under 12 characters, even though you're supposed to name things sensibly. When you name your functions, that's really irritating. I hope Google can come up with something to fix that one. Sensors, actuators. Now, remember the Arduino and the Raspberry Pi are kind of king of the hill. They're quite confusing. If I was supposed to teach it, I would have a bunch of kids who could follow my directions, but maybe they just couldn't get creative with it. Maybe 2 or 3 kids in a class could get creative with the Arduino. The Spark core, we actually might be able to do something with it. What it does, say a sensor, it sends up to 3.3 volts back to the Spark core. We can sense that. Well, this is what the Arduino, let's get to it. The Arduino, confusing, this Seed Studio thing has all these sensors. Fingerprint, flame, gas, GPS, LED, just an enormous amount of sensors. And they've even got kits that you can buy with the sensors. Let's go into one. Let's say we go into electricity sensor. Okay, I guess this is sensing electricity. But it has this serial connector that can hook up to, here's kind of cool. This is the Spark core, goes right there, and you have all these serial connectors. But what's so frustrating about this is the Spark core just needs low milliamps, 3.5 or 3.3 volts. This is making it all serial connected. You can do a massive amount of stuff. I may have to learn how to do this, but I don't want to. It's not needed. This Spark core is awesome. It can be used to make things that the internet interacts with. You shouldn't have to go to that. It's already there and it's working, and I may have to learn how to use it and teach it, but it's making it a serial connection when it could just be like 2 AA batteries connecting. So let's see what else we've got. Now there's a Spark community. Sensible of Spark to set up a Spark community, but it's a community of people with Arduinos and with Raspberry Pis, very, very intelligent. They're trying to do stuff, not necessarily make it easier. And so you've got all this stuff you could go through, but it's not getting down to what's the basic thing needed. Now, there are example projects, same kind of thing. These very cool, very smart people doing all kinds of awesome things, but it's not making it easier. Even something simple like the breadboard. Ooh, I should have a picture of Spark breadboard. But basically, they have red lines along the top, and almost all of them have these blue lines along the top. Blue is for ground, which is a black wire. Make the line along the top a black line. Fixing, you should go to it. It's a very cool site where you get to draw, well, things like this. There's your little Spark core. All these pins here connect up to ground. All these pins here connect up to, this is probably 3.3 volts. It's pretty cool. This looks like some kind of LDR sensing light. Here's a light. There's a voltage divider of some sort. Okay, so let's check out the docs again. What I want to do is, with all these issues, why is the Spark Core or Photon so cool? Because it's cheap and it works out of the box over Wi-Fi. It's got a great IDE. I'm not going to load that up today. It's on my other videos. And you can flash code to your device very simply all over Wi-Fi. So let's go look at these docs again. All kinds of nice docs. Quite simple program here. We're setting our LED, which is D0, to high, which means on, delaying a second, 1,000 milliseconds, and then setting it to low. Oh, there's one of those drawings with those blue lines. So let's go down here. Ooh, here we go. Here's some kind of LED. It's programmed. Doesn't look that complex. But here, this is where you activate it. Use curl. Well, there are lots of ways of doing this. There's a JavaScript SDK, which I've tried, can't figure it out. But this kind of looks like something you would send in a form on a web page. Well, I really want Spark to work on web pages because I use Phonegap. Phonegap takes a web page and makes a mobile app. You don't have to learn Java. It's all reasonably easy JavaScript. But I look through all these things and there's nothing about web pages. You can use Node to make your Spark core, your portable Spark core becomes a web server. No, that's just so frustrating. So let's see if we can get this thing working. Here's a bit of simple code. You've got your setup. I'm setting D7, the one that can light straight out of the box, to output, meaning I'm outputting to it some electricity. I've called this Whoopee. I'll talk about that later. This is my one Spark function. It's just telling that on the web page it's going to be called Whoopee. On here it's called my Whoopee. Right there it's called my Whoopee. It doesn't have any string arguments, but I'm just putting that in because it's probably supposed to. This loop is going over and over and over again. It's waiting a second, and then it's turning off D7. My program that I'm going to activate from the internet sets digital write to D7 on. It's just setting it on. And then it's returning the number 1 to say it worked. Now, here we go. Here's the web page. I got a bunch of writing. Here. The only important stuff is right here. It's a form. Anyone who's done web pages knows form. We can post. I have an action. This is really important. It's a site here which has a bunch of numbers and then Whoopee. That's activating that function. That's easy. This part you get from Spark core. I'll explain that somewhere else. That identifies your core. This is obviously not my core number. Now this is kind of interesting. I'm targeting an iframe. Iframe's right there. It's got the name my frame. That's just so I can see on my web page what happens. It means I don't have to use JSON or AJAX or any of that fancy stuff. Now here's a necessary thing to send. I've made it hidden, but be aware these web pages should not go on the internet because it's not really hidden. People can just view your source. It has to be called access token, exactly spelt like that. And here's your access token, which once again is something you get from the Spark site. It's got letters and numbers. It's really, really long. This one only has numbers. I thought it only had numbers. This one we're not using in this one, but it's called params, and it's where you send more information. So there's my web page. Here's how it would look online. It's Lights D7, and this won't work because I've got these bad access token and bad core ID. But look what you get back. I click it, and you get information. There's an error, and it didn't work. When it is set up properly with the right access code and core, these two big numbers, then you get information back, and the darn light on your core works. Anywhere in the world, because it's internet connected, it lights up. That's cool. I can teach that. Now, I've got a better version out there which does some Ajax and JSON. It's way better. It's got sliders and stuff like that. That's another video. Okay, here we go. I've got my Spark core straight out of the box. Well, actually it's been set up with Wi-Fi already. I'm just going to plug it in. There it goes. It starts up. It does Wi-Fi. It does CN, and it's working. Here's my web page with just one big honking button. And let's see what happens. It goes. Okay, that's all. It just goes on. It does seem to be a little slow the first time, but then it speeds up after that. And it's got the auto off, so that's basically what it is. Now, you get your core, and you have a look at it. I could show this to a class. They come with a starter kit. Let's see, the starter kit. It comes with all these cool things. Look at them, LEDs, multicolor LEDs, a little servo motor, all this stuff, a little motor. But that's confusing. And every month I teach something to my kids that's confusing, and I see them. They can follow my steps. A PHP database, online database. They follow my steps. They don't get it. Maybe 2 or 3 kids in the class get it. You can tell in the final project they do because they're creative. Well, if I show my kids this, they're not going to get it. What we need is some Internet of Things ready devices. Look at this logo I made. It's pretty bad. 3.3 volts. We need devices like even an LED. Do I attach a resistor to make it work? What I want is black wires and yellow wires. Yellow wires hook up to the core. Black wires hook up to ground. Make it work. I can use that in the classroom. There are 200,000 schools in North America. If each school gets 20 of these things, you're looking at, what's 200,000 times 20? You're looking at 4 million possible LEDs to purchase. Now, the Arduino community, the Raspberry Pi community is going to be, don't do that. They have to learn about voltage dividers and Wheatstone bridges. Well, computer programming, this is what the computer sees, a bunch of ones and zeros. This is what people used to see, assembly language. I tried teaching it. It's really hard. About 20 years ago, I switched to JavaScript. I still tried those other language, ActionScript, all this stuff. Kids get JavaScript. The world gets JavaScript. 2 billion computers are controlled by Java. All devices, your cell phones. But people are using JavaScript to do stuff. Okay, we don't need to learn all these things. We just need some devices that can hook up to this Spark core. Like, look at this. This is a voltage divider. There's a sensor or a resistor. This one senses light. The voltage gets higher when there's more light. But do a little switcheroo here. This one senses dark. The voltage gets higher when it's dark. I just want to buy these things. I don't want to spend a lot of money. It doesn't look expensive. But I don't want to be teaching voltage dividers to junior high kids. Once they've done Physics 12, sure, we can do complex series and parallel circuits. They can do all the math, then they get it. But let them play. Let these kids play with this stuff. Oh, look, Spark has, let's get over here, a relay shield. You hook up the spark core, and then you can hook up 4 outputs to high voltage. My goodness, no teacher should ever take high voltage and play with it in the classroom. Just give me this. 4 outs, 5 outs, that hook up to the spark core, the digital side, a ground. Make it easy. I can use this with kids. Kids can make lights go on over the internet. They can make the app with Phonegap. They can have fun with this stuff. Then in Physics 11 and 12, we can teach them what the heck's going on. They might be interested. Right now, they're not interested. Look at this, a coffee machine. How hard would it be for some brilliant hardware person to put a black and a yellow wire? I can hook that up. Okay, servo. The Arduino community is totally fine with this. Black, red, white. White you control, red you hook up to the board, black you hook up to ground, there's your 5 volts. You balance out. If you want 4 servos, you got to balance out the microamps. No! Make it an external battery. Hook this up to the spark core, make it obvious. This goes to the spark core, this goes to an external battery. Then you can hook up 8 servos. You can make the Canada Arms space thing online. It would be very cool. Look at this. Why don't we make a whoopee cushion? This hooks up to the spark core. Leave it at home. Skype someone in your family. Activate it. Tell them that's disgusting. Why would they be doing that when they're Skyping? Let's hear. The Internet of Things is ready to make a huge splash for the general population. Do we have to wait for Google to make it all really easy? Or will some other entrepreneur take up the challenge and make Spark or something else ready devices? Sorry, I got a bit upset there. Anyway, I'm done. Here's an easier, I've got a link to it, a better, more powerful version of a spark core set up with an analog sensor, an analog sender, a digital send and receive. Anyway, Jeremy Ellis, maker of Roxetta.com, Twitter at Roxetta. Have an excellent day. I've got 8 months to get this course going. And let's make some of these devices. That would be very cool. Get kids interested, get them understanding code, get them understanding the Internet of Things. There's been some talk about exploding kittens. I think we can safely say that the Internet of Things, the cats are too light to activate the core.
Get away from the core.
What do you mean cats are safe from the Internet of Things? Let's change a few stuff here. Add touch, activation. I'm a web ninja. So are cats safe from the Internet of Things? It's sort of... Oh! There it goes! It went off! The cat activated it. Cats are not safe.